Hi everyone. So welcome to this focus series. So this is the last talk, number 10. So Focus is a program by Institut français, inviting curators and institutions, directors from all over the world to come to France and to discover the French art scene. In this year, due to the pandemic, we decided to do the talks online. And today I'm very happy to welcome the artist Euridice Zaituna Kala, a Paris-based Mozambican artist. Hi, Euridice. And also talking with her, we have also curator Camille Chenais, who's a curator at Villa Vassilieff, run by Beton Salon. So Euridice, you have a 1-year research grant at Villa Vassilieff. And so you have right now an exhibition that is called I, the Archive, presenting a narrative and sensitive rereading of the Marquevaux archive. And through a mental and audio journey, the exhibition mixes your own memories, but also references with reflections on the archives themselves, their fragility, their porosity, and their lacks. And so I will pass on the word right now to you, Camille, to start the conversation with Zaituna. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, it's nice to meet you through Zoom. My name is Camille Chenais and I'm the head of exhibition and residency in Villa Vassilieff. Villa Vassilieff was a space that was created by the art center Beton Salon 5 years ago. And unfortunately, it's news we heard 2 weeks ago. It will close at the end of the year after a decision of the city of Paris to do something else with this space. Villa Vassilieff is for the moment located in a former artistic studio of a Russian artist called Marie Vassilieff. And it's situated in a particular neighborhood in Paris, Montparnasse, which was a working class district that attracted many artists, both French and foreigner, at the beginning of the 20th century, and that became a kind of a hub for artistic modernity in Paris. Today, in this neighborhood, there is a few traces of this artistic Montparnasse. The district was completely transformed in the 60s to meet the political ambition of reimagining Montparnasse as a business district. Villa Vassilieff was created with the idea of reconnect with its history of an old artistic studio, and by the idea of inviting artists and researchers and curators to take a contemporary look at this heritage. Its program of exhibition and residency is dedicated to unexplored resources and aim to rewrite and diversify the history of art. With this purpose in mind, we start 5 years ago a partnership with the Centre Pompidou around the archive of Marc Vaux. Marc Vaux was a photographer who began his career at the end of the First World War, and he was an art photographer. He was mostly photographed artists, artworks, and artist studio in Paris. And until his death in the 70s, he used the same photo camera and produced more than 170,000 glass plate negative. So everything are preserved in the Pompidou centers. And since 4 years, they start to digitalize the whole archive that is now available online. This photograph archive provides a new perspective on the social life of artworks and artists in Paris at the beginning of the century and until the 70s. And since 2017, with the ADAGP, Villa Vassilieff co-created a research program that aims at developing the work of an artist around this archive. And so Euridice Kala is the third laureate of this grant. We worked together for a year, starting June 2019. And the exhibition she will now present you is kind of the result of this year research around this archive and the meeting we have through the year against this theme. So we decided that maybe as one of the most important things of the exhibition is a sound piece. We did a small video to present you the exhibition, so I will run it now. And after Euridice will go in deeper details in the project and present you the different aspects of her research and production. So I'm okay.
Cette image d'un lieu ancien, poussiéreux, presque perdu, est étrangère à mon enfance. J'ai des difficultés à infiltrer les choses et les lieux qui m'invitent à le faire. Je trouve ça plutôt pervers et ça m'enlève le désir initial que j'avais pour une idée. Non pas parce que toutes les autres se sont emparés des questions que je souhaite poser, mais parce que les gardiennes de l'information dissonnent avec ma propre existence. Marc vaut une introduction très violente, construction commerciale. Un photographe qui était dans le business de la documentation. Je suppose qu'il est important que quelqu'un fût là pour photographier et archiver. Il est difficile d'entrer dans une archive commerciale, de trouver de la poésie dans le capital. Est-ce que cela rend l'archive non pertinente? Est-ce que cela empêche d'y trouver de la poésie? Non, car Marc Vaux documentait la scène artistique et non des événements ordinaires. Vaux, comme mon père, était un gardien, un protecteur, un veilleur. Aïcha, Jean de Botton, la Baker, James Baldwin, aucun résultat. Jazz, aucun résultat. Bal Blomet, aucun résultat.
Thank you for the video.
Yeah.
You have to say that this is a video you made especially for a virtual tour for us. It's not a video that is presented within the exhibition. It's just to give you an idea of the exhibition, because there is you can hear the sound, and so you made this special video for the virtual tour. Thank you.
Well, now that Camille stopped the sharing, so I'll try to introduce myself because I think I don't know if it records because you were having this conversation earlier. Thank you so much, Adeline and Joséphine, for inviting me and to this talk series. I'm happy to share this project, and thank you, Camille, for the introduction and for the video, because I think we always trying to make sure that the main piece, which is the sound, is always part of the imagery. I think I will start by introducing myself and saying that I am a Mozambican artist born in Maputo, capital of Mozambique, and I've lived almost 10 years in South Africa. And then I moved here to Paris. It's been almost 5 years that I've been in Paris, based in Paris. And I think the basis of this project is also a way of trying to bring all these spaces that I have occupied, be it Maputo, be it Johannesburg, and to occupy different spaces such as the Villa Vassilieff. We started the project in mid-August last year, September, and we followed by a series of interesting meetings and discussions around this phone Markvo, and me trying to get familiar with this archive of images and trying to understand what my position and would be in reinterpreting these images and giving them a sort of, conceptual contemporary meaning and relevance. So, when you, as an artist and someone that calls herself a researcher, I am always aware of the importance of my position in putting histories in a contemporary space, because it really interests me. But also I'm interested in how, in fact, the meaning of activating Western-based ideas and information. So it was earlier on very clearly that I was trying to find kind of a door, a window to get into this phone Markvo, and to be able to familiarize, to have a real, create a dialogue between myself, my context, all the histories that I carry, and Markvo himself. So I started by creating these basic connections, trying to understand the fact that he recorded most of the images were recorded on glass plates, was one of the first basic connection that we found. And the earlier project I had submitted for this prize had this relationship to the digitization. So the virtual reuse and iconography in our current virtual social media environment. How are we creating new iconographies from images that we share on an everyday basis? So it was a way of kind of a window to be able to enter into Markvo's world, and to make sure that I could find a way to speak about this without feeling like I am not, like I'm just appropriating the phone Markvo. I am not just consuming this phone for what it is. I'm not being consumed either. So there were images that were particularly clearly interesting to me, which were the images of Aisha Goblet, which is on your left on the screen, and the image of one model. So one thing that was directly interesting to me is how these characters were, like many other characters in the phone, on the archive, were kind of either misquoted or badly captioned. So I wanted to also understand how to create these new narratives around, this idea of captioning, giving meanings and names, re-entering these images into our contemporary imaginarium. So in looking for this familiarity, I found these 3-4 images scattered in this almost 200,000 archive of images that looked in a way quite familiar, and histories that I could, and narratives that I could well reinterpret. Aside from the many artists, the many entertainers, the many authors that were in the fond, that already were well interpreted, reread, rethought. I wanted to make sure that I could engage with these characters that were at least not well represented, or even bring characters, because what was also quite interesting is that between this early 30s through the 70s, there were many other characters coming from Black America that were also not being represented on the phone. And that was this idea of working with these transparencies, working with these absences. And in this process, I was trying to also kind of understanding that the dialogue between myself and Vaux was to be, in a kind of sense, collaborative, complementary. That's what we were just speaking about, is how to complement this archive. And in doing this work, I am bringing a particular energy that is mine, but also it's part of a kind of collective history. So these notions of the personal and the collective, they started to become very empiric in the project. So I think during the research project, one thing that was important was this writing process, how to write, rewrite, caption, give new meanings. And within this writing process, there was a sense of collecting words. So I did this for a period of 3, 4, 5 months, collect words and fill these words with bits of text. So for, I don't know, 4 months, I put myself I started to kind of like diarize what would be a diary, but in fact, or a journal, let's say, but in fact, it was a way of creating a possible connection, finding deeper connections to Marc Vaux, this personality, and kind of bring him out of his fictional space, the idea of this legendary photographer that is walking through Montparnasse between the 30s and the 70s and taking pictures and creating this archive, all these mythologies that are created around, these characters, these principal characters. I really wanted to make sure that I could humanize him, we could be closer to each other. So one of the things that was clear from the beginning is this idea that to approach him to a real sense of familiarity, and to bring him back to the history of my father, and the fact that my father was working in a national archives in Mozambique, the fact that he was also co-participating to register many histories, national histories. I wanted to make sure that this dialogue kept creating these proximity distance type of relationship, knowing that there is a collective, larger history, and there is also a kind of personal, intimate history, and these two worlds can coexist. So this text is almost like a confessional, but at the same time, it is quite as well historical. I'm speaking about personal things like the death of my father, but at the same time, I'm contextualizing that from a kind of historical place. I'm trying to make sure that the history of my mother and that of Josephine Baker, they link somehow. I'm trying to bring back all these characters that are part of this larger imaginarium, are closer to my kind of upbringing, and they're not just kind of, like these northern histories that you beat, almost untouchable histories. So this exercise was based also on a sense of, I wanted, at the beginning, it was, if you can ask me, it was difficult to find a sense of love, and freedom to continue to engage with this fond and this archive. And I had this meeting with a curator based in Paris and she was asking me, but why this archive? Why are you supposed to be consuming and you know, like, and being consumed by this archive? Why are you as a Black artist supposed to be activating this, bringing it into contemporary level? Why is this conversation important? And I had asked myself also, and to allow myself to as a practitioner, to give a sense of, or have a sense of generosity towards this archive, to understand that these histories, these spaces, they're not just about erasing figures that would be familiar to me, but are interesting as a complementary space. How can you introduce, reintroduce, make these images or people visible within these archives? Because they still rest quite transparent, but how can they find their visibility within these archives, within these histories that are quite central, you know? So I think the process is, for me, let's just say this is the research, this is the writings, the space. It was a way, a space for giving, for being generous, for loving. And thereafter there was this other processes, which is the translation process that we did with Camille, which was another energy where, you know, everything that was served into this large basket of information that I gave in the text was being re-edited, you know, like this kind of letting all these ideas that were larger and not necessarily meaningful for the project to get away and to be able to like center something. So what you would hear like for the sound piece would be this more, you know, like filtered version of this text. And from there, I say I work with keywords, and these keywords, they were spaces that became quite object-like things that I would enumerate each time that I would speak about characters. I would enumerate spaces, I would enumerate colors, emotions. It would be like, it became a kind of an archive of itself. So it's a kind of this, I would call it, I call it an emotional archive, this idea of these ethereal messages that are not necessarily, sorry, there's another construction going on here. There's not necessarily words that, you know, they're not objects, but by their meaning, they become quite object-like. They are little sculptures of themselves, these keywords. So you'd find these keywords each time in the text, and they're being repeated in the sound. And that became also quite important because what they revealed was another way, a possible way to create processes for the works that you would see in the space, the transfers, the ionization, the skeletons that you would see in the space. So it's someone was telling me the other day, and this is a conversation again that we had with Camille, this idea of this body that is gaining all of its let's say features, the skeleton feature, the skin of it. So these cushions that you'd see in the space, they are giving all these meanings to these transparent sculptures that you see downstairs. So as you go upstairs, you would start to complete this body. You'd start to give it a particular, you know, meaning, as we know of bodies, but they are much more than that, let's say. So this is how we are constructing the exhibition. This is how we're making the gestures, the writings, the light features that become these kind of abstract writings. Everything that this processes of the research has given me is being translated into the space visually. And one other part of this, finding out ways to complement and to dialogue with this phone, with this archive, was to bring other archives, other than my personal archives, but archives with which I feel completely linked and that really contain information that I reuse in my daily experience, in my practice. So archives such as Ricardo Rangel, who is a was a photograph based in Maputo, Mozambican photograph, who really was active in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s in Mozambique. So pre-independence, post-independence, for lack of wanting to speak about the post-colonial. So these people who, and also the Revue Noire, who included artists who were working in African countries that, you know, pre-independence, post-independence, and how they work really, photographic work, I would say, shaped the way that we see the continent nowadays. And to go on into this idea of using images, I am originally formed as a photographer, but I would call myself always a non-photographer because of the limits of photography and the representation, you know. So I at the same time that I'm interested in representation, in image making and image creation, I'm always thinking on how images are creating fixed representations, fixed identities, and they are in a way making a kind of an experience for the audience that is not real, that is not necessarily about evolving representations and evolving characters. So for me, putting images into glass, reflecting transparency, materiality, trying to make sure that images don't rest in their own, in its kind of fixed mode. It's a way of reconnecting with the multiple, the idea that the image or the character that's being photographed has a possibility of recreating themselves. So I'm not working with ever with fixed images. I'm working with the idea of processing and processes and trying to make sure that images are regaining meaning as they go. And heritage, you know, Camille spoke about heritage earlier on, and how, you know, we create archives and we represent them or reconsume them thereafter, and we reconsume them as they were without having this heavy discussion on what it meant to exist in this point, how these characters can evolve. So this is an exercise that I do specifically because, you know, I'm constantly rethinking how Black bodies are being represented, how they are being rethought, reimagined, all these phantomatic dispositives around the Black body and representation. And I really think that, you know, photography has this limiting aspect to it, and that, you know, in re-engaging with image and image making, the archive is an interesting space to reintroduce new narratives and to make sure that there's new readings, and the ways that we are consuming images can be rethought. And to finish, I would speak at one important aspect, which is the fragility of these archives. Because the way that, you know, this idea of digitization and reinterpretation, you know, each archive, each iconography, it's so, let's say, this is a fragility, this aspect of invulnerability, you know, wanting to revisit an archive. And I think what the material that I work with does is that it really reinterprets this fragility. It really gives you a sense of it being sensible. So this idea of the sensible reading, it's also to do with the archive, with the material that I'm using in the space. And I think, you know, it was a super experience working with the team at the Vassilieff. We had a good time in thinking this entire year on not only on the exhibition, but what it means to work with this archive, and how can we retranslate into something that can be, you know, work within these limits that I've created for myself, the personal and the collective. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you, Euridice, and thank you so much. So if there are some questions, so you're welcome to ask. You can say on the chat that you want to ask a question. So I was wondering, so because we can listen to the sound, so in the exhibition, so it's like you telling a story about this, this archives and mixing your personal memories and the memories of those people, but the pictures of the people you found in the archives. And I wanted to know how you work with it. Is it your voice that we can hear? Did you work with together with actors, performers?
Sure. In fact, it's been some years that I've been working with a collective that it's not necessarily a collective, but a group of young actors, actresses but luckily I am that they share their voices. So for me, it was a way also of queerizing the notion of rereading and trying to find ways to reinterpret what I am saying in different voices. Looking for, like, there's a male voice, there's two females, but the idea that my identity is not resting fixed. I'm always, embracing parts of myself. So each person, each character, each moment that I wrote on the text is being reread or read, let's say, by an actor, actress.
Mm-hmm. And so you've been, there is this space, this pink space, with this very strong color. Is it, so it's a place to listen, to get into the spirit of Margot, into the, to have, is it, was it thought as a body, as the inside of a body, or, this very strong color, or is it, I don't know, can you tell me more about the space?
Sure. I think I started to say that I really wanted to establish a sense. It was important to work with a sense of love and generosity. And I think I'm just being cliche, but also because this is part of, I've used this color before to reflect on the questions of love, but to find that the story goes a bit. There's a Haitian voodoo deity called Vassilieff, and she represents, love at its highest version. So I've worked with this in a different project. It was a way of recovering the sense of love and generosity and trying to. I work with her to reread the poems of Gabriele D'Annunzio. I'm not sure if you are familiar with Gabriele D'Annunzio. He was deemed the father of fascism and, part of the Art Povera period, and he was also a poet. So he was a military man and a poet. So it was clearly that there is these two worlds mixing, and I wanted to be able to reread his poems as a way to speak about the other. So I researched this deity, and her favorite color is pink. So at a certain point, it's a way of speaking about this highest love and generosity, and trying to find a way to create space, as you said, Adeline, for me and Vo, for Vo and my story and Vo's story, and to kind of in this pink area to create this kind of, it's not an immersive, but to create this kind of sense that we are in a sharing space, not only in a listening space, but we are in a sharing space. We can share space, and we can probably listen together, but we can share space. There's a sound transverses the entire, exhibition almost. So there is, possibilities to listen to parts of it in different points at the exhibition. But this special pink space, it's dancing, me dancing with Vo in a way.
Okay, so it's a dancing space. It could be a place to dance, no? To invite, auditors to, spectators to dance or to listen, and maybe you could tell more also about the cushions, the form that the shapes you made for the cushions, and also about the this last space with the sentences. So if you could tell us more about the sentences. Is it part of the process that you told about where you started writing words as an inspiration from, I mean, going through the archives, and is it kind of, the result of this this process?
I don't know, Camille, do you want to say something?
Yes, it's well about the light, because there was just maybe to finish on this question of light. The idea also with this exhibition was not to do it in a kind of a white cube, but to play with the light in every room. So Villa Vassilieff is looking more like an artistic studio than an art space. So we have this idea of not pretending to be in an art space, but more playing with this script that was set by the actors, as if we enter in kind of theater spaces, and where there is this element that are super important in theater, light and place to sit. So maybe after the questions went with this idea, but to have this space that is not like a fake white cube, but are more like welcoming space where the bodies are moving and starting to be part of what is taking shape inside the space. So it was very important to don't play with the normal light of the space, but to have light intervention in every room. So there is the pink neon in the first floor, and in the second floor there is this sculptural light that are more yellow. And after, in the last floor, there is this red LED that are moving with word. And the image I show you, it's made in daylight, so there is a lot of light in the space during day. But now that it's starting to be winter, it's become to be darker, and the space is completely different because it's moved with the time of the day, with the time of the season. And not the exhibition, the light are taking more shape like at the beginning of the exhibition also.
Yeah, I think just to continue on that, I think one thing that was important is that this text that I wrote initially becomes a kind of scenography, because we're thinking it in a way as a kind of film play thing, and it means that I really always thought it as a kind of, you know, moving images, or a kind of film without images. So it was important to do this kind of scenography as you go in the space, as Camille was saying, and then the cushions become in a way kind of extras. One of the first images that really struck me from the archive was one of the balls. I was so fascinated by these images, the dance and the balls. so Marco was like documenting a lot of the balls, and the Swedish balls, the Russian balls, except the bal blomé. so these balls was so important. People were masquerading. They were taking on to different, let's say, identities. There was a lot of heterogeneity going on. So it's a lot of mélange, and that was one of the first images that really struck me as important to reflect on as we go on with the project. So the scenography was quite important. So the cushions come to establish a presence. So the exhibition is never without an audience, never without a presence. So you always have these characters. What we did with an artist called Carla Mani, I think I'm not sure if I'm saying her family name, and what I did was to find these images, draw them into tissue, and thereafter Carla went and worked on them into kind of conceiving these. But the idea was that there were always these characters that were part of the research, such as, for instance, Kim Kardashian. ask me why. And I really wanted to make sure that they re-enter the conversation, even in this kind of subliminal way. So people are sitting on top of them, people are walking around them. These characters are always present, these parts of the research. That's also one of the things. We do a 1 year research, we do a 1 year working, writing work, we do a 1 year, producing work, and there are so many things that get lost in all these translations. So to go back, Adeline, to your question about the words on the panels, this is called translations. So it's like deleted scenes, whatever was not put on the text, whatever was edited out, some of the parts of the text are part of this LED panel. So I think, trying to work within these two, worlds between what is, displayed and what is not displayed, because there's no space, there's no time. But finding the compromise between, what we filter and what, what we can make present. So the exhibition plays with these two, what is the main part of the research and what is, around it. So these two would represent that, the questions and the LED panels. And what?
Okay, great. Yeah, so we are going soon until the end of this conversation, and I wanted to know, because right now, so you're still in residency, so until the end of the year, then I would like to know, what are your upcoming projects after that?
But I'm not in residency.
No, you're not. You have a residency from the city of Paris. Sorry. You're not in residency anymore because the exhibition has started. So
yeah.
Sorry, the exhibition is still on until I don't know the date.
19th of December.
Okay, yeah, the end of the year. And so, what are your projects for next year?
Well, for this year still, because we're planning with Camille a kind of like public program, very small things, because of the restrictions, we cannot go big. But the idea is to kind of continue to engage with the exhibition, to mix and to bring other archives into the space. So we are inviting Léopold Lambert from The Funambulist and Robert Machire from Pungwe, who are both collecting different types of archives and dialogues. Robert is based in South Africa, Léopold is based here, but a lot of his archives are kind of conversations around the Middle East, architecture, and the violence of it, of space and creating space. So we're going to do a listening session, I hope, on the 14th of November. And then thereafter, we try to make other public things in the space. I think for me, one of the things that is important is to not let the exhibition die by itself, or just like have these kind of let's say professional meetings, but to have these spaces for breathing, like creating breathing spaces for the exhibition itself. And thereafter, I have in January a solo exhibition supported by the CNAP at this gallery called Salon H in Paris. And then thereafter, an exhibition at the Aros Museum in Denmark. Still not familiar with the title yet. And then there's an exhibition at the Musée Edouard Philippe, c'est ça? Ouais, in the Seine-Saint-Denis for the African season. I have another exhibition, I think it's part of the African season in the Caen Center, curated by Sandrine Oliasson and Ariane Blanc, je pense. And I was just finishing, I had a really great conversation with Kanisile Mbongwe, who's a curator based in Cape Town, South Africa, who's curating an exhibition called Love and Freedom in Maastricht. So there's a couple of projects, you know, and one other project that is really close to my art is the Casablanca Biennale curated by Christina Yen. And I think that's still not clear when it's going to happen, but Christine is like inventing a lot of digital things happening. So I'm like excited about that.
All right, so many projects are now upcoming. And I wanted to mention, because you mentioned the African season, so not everyone knows what it is. It is actually a season organized by Institut français with the curator Ngone Fall. And it will start at the end of the year. It's called Africa 2020. And so it will happen throughout France in different art venues, and it will show many African artists in France. And also, yes, we have one question coming from Maria Lavajova from Bac, Netherlands.
Thank you. I'm aware we almost running out of time, so I try to be short. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I really regret I cannot see it in person, Euridice. Really beautiful work. But I'd like to I'd like to direct the question to Camille, specifically from the institutional perspective. Villa Vassilieff is such an important space. And it's so important to kind of fight for places that can provide, other than white cubish kind of possibility for an artist, long-term engagement with research, etc., etc. So, of course, we've heard about the withdrawal of the funding. I personally find it very sad and unexpected in the middle of pandemic. Feels very, very counterintuitive. To me, I have a double question, one question with two sides. One, how is this perceived locally in Paris and in France, and whether Villa Vassilieff has plans to continue in some other form, nonetheless, to reimagine this format that is so critical and crucial to support artists this way, in my view. Thank you.
Yes, it's true. It's a very complicated moment for us, as it was also not expected, because we heard that 2 weeks ago, but we know we have some trouble. So it was a very complicated year for the institution. As you may know, our founder and former director, Mélanie Boutelot, left the institution some months ago. And so it was very complicated. We have no director. We lost a big sponsor of the space, and there was this pandemic that also was complicated, because it was supposed to be the election for the mayor of Paris that was supposed to be in spring. Finally, it was because of the pandemic, it was finished in July, and it's all the year we were waiting for the city of Paris, that is our main public sponsor, to take a decision about this space, because to continue we need more help, at least for a year, because without a director it was complicated to find new sponsor, and also we have no right to start new project until the fact that a director, so everything came in the same time. And so there was also, to be completely honest, it was very complicated to continue without Mélanie, without money, and also without a clear support of our, because as you may know, Beton Salon was a complicated space to work in. There was a lot of difficulties inside. And so as a space, we lose a kind of credibility in Paris because of working conditions. So it was difficult to find where to find support in this process. So as we have a very small team, we didn't really know what to do, and our board is also very tired about all the difficulty he has to go through the year. So there was no decision to try to go against the decision of closing this space. I think also a new direction will be nominated for Beton Salon at the end of the year. Villa Vassilieff as a space will not be part of it, but I think it will give a new breath to this institution. And I hope the city of Paris will use this space that is very particular, the space where Villa is, to create a new project that we are looking forward to. But it's true, like it's, for me personally, it's very hard to lose this space that was a space very open for Parisian art scene to the international, and to have also a place of residency that we lost. We are losing that. In Paris, there is not a huge place for residency program. So it's very sad, but like I think too much difficulty in the same time. We are not.
To stay over, and especially a 1-year grant is something really rare, actually. Yeah? It's something very special. I mean, for an artist to have a 1-year research grant, this is precious. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your presentation. So thank you, Euridice. Thank you, Camille. And I would like to just to pass on the word to Marie-Cécile Burnichon, who is the Deputy Director of our Artistic Department, as it is the last talk today for all our 10 talks. She wanted to say a word, so the goodbye to everyone. So Marie-Cécile, can you hear me? Yes, she's coming. I can see she's connecting. The audio is connecting, so she's coming to us. It takes a little bit of time because, because we are going to have another meeting all together in 2 weeks, a kind of debriefing to have your feedbacks on the different talks and on what you would like to construct with us for future collaborations, or if you want us to put you in contact with the different artists to have their portfolios, but not only the artists, also the professionals you met from the different art venues. So how can we carry on with this after these talks? And also we wanted to propose you to have, to organize for you private meetings with artists or with professionals, curators from the French art scene. And so in order to do that, we wanted also to have your feedbacks. And so we will actually, so we've sent you a doodle for our meeting that will happen in 2 weeks to know, what your availability is. We will send you a form that is important for us to fill in, to have your feedbacks on all this talk series. And so as you know already, all the talks will be available on the website of the Institut français. Yes, and we're looking forward to organizing these private meetings for you. And I'm just checking if Marie-Cécile is able to connect, but I can see that she's trying to connect herself, but it doesn't come, so the connection is pretty bad. So I will, maybe I will try. Please stay just a few minutes. She's trying to connect. I will try to call her briefly. Marie-Cécile, here you are.
Yes, I'm here. That's very peculiar because I'm just following two meetings at the same time, and I'm happy to join you finally.
Great. So I was just mentioning I have briefly mentioned when you were trying to connect yourself, when we were waiting for you, I was mentioning the form that we will send and also the final meeting. and the possibility of organizing private meetings for them.
Yes, yes, yeah. So it's a pleasure. It's a bit weird for me to meet you at the beginning and then join you by the small part and then joining you at the end. But I mean, we were, let's say, it was a fantastic week. So I hope that you all enjoyed the focus. It's a very specific situation. So that's the reason we are really willing to go on the conversation with you and to get your feedback about this unconscious meeting, online unconscious meeting. And as we mentioned it from the beginning, that's just the very first step on the conversation. So the second one is to get your feedback. Then you can also, so that feedback by the form, but also feedback by your online meeting. I think that Adeline sent you some different, a doodle so that we can find the good date to meet. And then the second step will be some meeting with some partner and artists from the city of Marseille. And the third step will be the final one, I mean the good one, the moment where we can meet in real. So that will be very important, that we can find a date. You know, it's very complicated. At the beginning we were planning springtime, but maybe springtime won't be the good period. But anyway, we will be in touch, so we will find the good period. But what I find very important is that what we mentioned from the beginning is that you are a body of European curators and institution director, and the idea of how we can share a project, how we can start collaboration is really a point that we will get to. So when we will talk in 15 days, I think it will be very important that you can bring some ideas or projects that you would like to launch, or you would like to confront, or you would like to share. And then we can think to different way to build this kind of network. So and first, of course, you also need to confirm us that you are interested in doing so that we can work on that. But I mean, usually, because as we mentioned, I mean, from the beginning, we have like more than 200 people that we have invited, and the way that we can go and working with them is really through projects, supporting some invitations to artists and professional for an exhibition and unconscious. But I think that we can go a bit further, so that we can have some kind of regular talk and discussion about your project, and also about the situation, because facing the pandemic should be still something that we can talk about, and we can also share tools and ideas. And on the very first day we meet, I think that many of you brought very stimulating initiative. So I think it's something that we need to go on. So I hope you enjoy this week, even if it was like some kind of virtual flight from your office and from your home, but it was inspiring, and that it will also refresh your mind with good ideas and future projects.
So thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. And we're looking forward to seeing you very soon. So in 2 weeks. And so we will carry on the contact. And so we will be very happy to share in more details your feedbacks. So yeah, so soon. So thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice end of week. Bye bye. Take care. Take care to all of you.